Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this special transmission on PTV World. I'm your host Khalid, but you very well know that the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly is going on, and today we all know also the time difference that is there between the US and Pakistan. Because of that, the day in fact dawns a bit late in US as per Pakistani time. So we will of course be concentrating on the address of our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab, who's going to address this auspicious gathering today, and of course highlight the important issues that confront Pakistan, the world, the Muslim world. We'll be looking forward to that, and we'll be deciphering different aspects of his address to the United Nations General Assembly. But before that, before this whole speech begins, we'd like to concentrate on what happened before, during these days of deliberations, during all the different statements that were made by important leaders such as the US President, such as the Iranian President, such as the Turkish President, and of course many others who have highlighted different aspects. But there was a commonality in all of that, and that was the Palestinian issue, Lebanon, Gaza and Israel, along with other important issues as well, like climate change. But the main onus of the discussions, all the statements made during these 2 or 3 days, 3 days rather, was what is happening in the Middle East. We'll be highlighting that as well, but in this time we'll be concentrating on all the different engagements our Prime Minister has had. What were the different aspects of those engagements that we could take out from those meetings, and how important have been those engagements, whether it be the meetings with the different leaders on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly session, whether it be the different other meetings that the Prime Minister attended and highlighted different aspects of what needs to be done by the Muslim world and by the world at large. We've been joined by former Ambassador at Large Nasir Khan Saab in the studios, and online will be joined later by 2 other important guests, and they'll come and I'll of course introduce them to you as and when they do join us. Nasir Khan Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. It's an important day for Pakistan today because we have the Pakistani Premier talking to the United Nations General Assembly session. It is an important day as well because many important issues plague the world, from Palestine to illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to climate change and so many other debt traps from the developing countries. And I mean, there's a whole crux of important matters. But at the weekly news briefing at the Foreign Office, the spokesperson said that some of the highlights of the speech will be made by the Prime Minister will include the issue of Palestine and the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and how important it is to resolve these issues at the earliest. What are your expectations from this address?
First of all, the speech that our Prime Minister has made in the Security Council has been very clear on the points that he made, not least of which is his view on the Gaza conflict and the war in Gaza. He has clearly and strongly condemned the fact that Israel is involved in a genocide, and he has said that we need to have sanctions against Israel. We need to have an embargo on trade and on weapons, and also that the leadership needs to be held accountable. So that, in my opinion, is a very strong and clear statement as far as our view on the conflict in Gaza is concerned. Then, of course, he made a very good statement about the war in Ukraine, because he said he would like the Security Council to look carefully at the possibility of escalation in this area, because ever since you have been hearing talks about long-range missiles, the Russians have on different occasions clearly pointed out that they would consider this an act of war, and they would not necessarily attack just the Ukraine or even NATO countries. They even gave the indication that they would be free to attack the United States. This is an extremely dangerous possibility, and I don't know if the leaders realize what a knife's edge we are walking on, because very early on the Russians have said that an attack on our cities, because long-range missiles can reach all the way to Moscow and cause great devastation there, will be a clear escalation of the conflict, and then there would be no holds barred. So, we don't want to take the risk of calling Putin's bluff. There are back channels also that are active, and they have been told very clearly. So at this stage, Britain seemed to be keen or agree to some extent to supply long-range missiles. But finally, I think...
But all the eggs are in the US's basket at this point.
Indeed. And so it was the Americans that finally made sure that they would not go that way. But apart from that, our Prime Minister spoke about Kashmir, and he not only said that Kashmir is a very dangerous dispute, a long-standing dispute, and a dispute that is a clear threat to international peace and security. And then he spoke about the plight of the Kashmiris in the valley, and he reminded them that the Security Council ought to act upon the gross human rights violations in the valley, and of course that they have a responsibility to act upon the resolutions that were passed decades ago, upon which there has been no movement. The promise that there would be a plebiscite in which the Kashmiri people would get the right to determine their future. Apart from that, he spoke about conflicts in Africa. He spoke about the threat to terrorism.
Vis-a-vis Afghanistan.
Vis-a-vis Afghanistan. And he said that, ISIS, Khorasan, as well as the fitna, is both a threat to us as well as to the rest of the world.
Indeed.
So there is something that the Security Council and its members need to do about that threat, because this is a global threat, it's not just a regional threat. Apart from that, he spoke about the possibility of debts and, earlier on also, I don't know if you followed the Secretary General's speech, in which
on day one.
He clearly mentioned the problem that underdeveloped countries are having with their debt, and the rest of the world has to get together to do something about it. So these were very, very important issues. And the thing was that next year we are going to be a member of the Security Council. So the effect this will have is to tell the rest of the world
what Pakistan stands for.
What Pakistan stands for and what our conduct will be in the Security Council in the coming days.
He also talked about UN peacekeeping, and of course he highlighted how that is very important and how the Security Council needs to initiate confidence building measures to prevent war between major powers and ease rising tensions, especially in the Asia Pacific region. He also talked about the zero tolerance for illegal use of force and revive global efforts to halt and reverse the new arms race both in the nuclear and conventional weapons. And I think these are very important points, as you have also said, that he raised in the high-level open debate of the United Nations Security Council on leadership for peace, which happened on the sidelines of this very important mood. We've also been joined by Lieutenant General Raza Khan Saab, who's a defense analyst. Thank you very much, Raza Khan Saab, to have joined us. Raza Khan Saab, today Pakistan's Premier is going to highlight the different aspects of Pakistan's stance on regional and international issues while he stands in front of the August 193 member United Nations General Assembly. What, in your point of view, would be highlighted during this? We just talked a little bit with Ambassador Nasir Ali Khan Saab on what he talked about at the session of the United Nations Security Council, where he highlighted Ukraine, where he highlighted Palestine, where he highlighted Kashmir, where he highlighted Afghanistan and the fitna al-Kharij issue as well as this arms race that has begun for both nuclear and conventional arms. What, in your point of view, needs to be done by this August gathering during this 79th United Nations General Assembly session?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I think there has been a number of television programs, both in Pakistan as well as abroad, and there is a viewpoint that the debates under the auspices of the General Assembly are non-binding, and therefore probably they are not as important. I think this is a misperception. I think this occasion of the UN General Assembly, which is important for a number of reasons, not only for Pakistan but many countries of the world, because this is the most appropriate, prestigious, and top level sort of a global platform to communicate to the world about Pakistan's viewpoint, Pakistan's concerns, and how can Pakistan promote not only its own interest but also contribute to peace and stability in the region, in the subcontinent, as well as in the world, through peacekeeping, peace enforcement operations, and as a prospective non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. Having said that, I think in the Prime Minister's uh, talk on the topic of leadership for peace, he talked of a number of disincentives that the world needs to actually sound to Israel. And he said very clearly that because of the Israeli genocide, particularly in Raza, and now what it is doing in Lebanon, and what it did previously in the West Bank, I think the Israeli leaders need to be made accountable. And he proposed that the sale of arms to Israel must be denied. And he also proposed that as a disincentive, I think the sale of ammunition in particular, and trade and economic sanctions must be sounded to Israel for two reasons. One, that it could actually bring an earlier ceasefire to the conflict in Middle East, which, at least in theory, is supported even by the supporter of Israel, which is the United States and UK, and in fact the whole world. So I think the Israeli Prime Minister will be there, and he's going to talk about Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on this occasion. And let's wait and see, what he has to say. I think so far in this war for 1 year, he has been trying to derive political mileage out of that. I think it will be in his interest, even if he wants political mileage out of this, to announce a unilateral ceasefire as desired by the people of the world, as desired by the General Assembly. So let's hope and let's see what he has to say. In addition to that, I think the Prime Minister very categorically said so in his address to the open debate on leadership for peace. But I think today at 6 p.m., he will repeat the importance of the resolution of the Kashmir problems in accordance with the wishes of the people of Kashmir, and also in accordance with the United Nations Security Council resolutions, which were actually at that time, I think it was Chapter 7, although the Indians are saying that no, they are non-binding because it was under Chapter 6. But if you look at the wordings and the sentences of that resolution, it is clearly, a binding resolution. And the earlier, I think India fulfills its obligations of plebiscite, it will be in the interest of not only India but peace and security in the subcontinent. At the same time, it is very important for Pakistan to inform the world that Afghanistan is again being used for safe havens under the support of the present Taliban government, not only for TTP, Daesh, but many other terrorist groups. And therefore, the world power needs to take notice about it, and it must apply pressure on the present interim government of Afghanistan to desist from providing them support, no matter what their rationale is, and to respect the Doha Accords. So these are some of the important issues I think, which he will address, in addition to his address about and concerned about the sustainable development goals, about which the defense minister also 2 days back, he made a mention of that, that unless there is complete peace in the world, and particularly in South Asia, I think the United Nations goals for sustainable development will be very difficult.
I think another important aspect will be climate finance as well, if the Prime Minister talks about that. But this is a topic that has been also on the tips of many a tongue. I'll revert back to Nasir Saab. Nasir Saab, you were talking about the Ukraine crisis, and I'll just like to refer a little bit to what Zelensky said in this session. He urged the global leaders to stand with his country, not seek a lull instead of a real just peace. He also, singled out China and Brazil for pushing what he called half-hearted settlement plans. We all know that today representatives of 20 United Nations states are set to discuss a 6-point peace deal that has been drafted by China and Brazil as an alternative to Zelensky's proposal. Do you feel such a proposal can take steam, can be implemented with the backing of important powers that be?
If there is sincerity of purpose, if there is political will, then peace will not take long to come about. Unfortunately, the problem is not as simple as the press or the media generally makes it out to be. First of all, the key issue is, why is it that the Western powers want to take NATO right up to the borders of Russia? Now, this is supposed to be a red line. Time and again the Russians have said, and it makes common sense that a power which a lot of Western countries try to dismiss as being overrated, has 6,000 nuclear weapons. And you are, trying to incite a conflict in an area which you cannot imagine how dangerous it can be. So that's my first point. But you're talking about the peace and the possibility of peace.
Because these 20 nations are getting together today as we speak, and they're going to also, push forward this species as an alternative to what Zelensky has been proposing.
Yes. So my point is, the people behind this, the fact that this conflict is becoming so prolonged is the military-industrial complex that continues to supply arms in the conflict, okay? Apart from the fact that it may be part of American policy to hurt Russia or to weaken Russia. Now, again, in my opinion, that is also a mistake. When the Soviet Union broke up and Russia was an independent country and all these smaller countries around it, I would imagine that the United States would make overtures towards Russia to include it in the ambit of Western countries. And that would prevent it from going into the lap of its main competitor in terms of power, economic and political and military power, which is China. So the mistake here is, by annoying Russia, by inciting violence in the area, by not reaching out to them, now you have pushed Russia firmly into the arms of China. So when you talk about whether the war or whether these peace initiatives will continue, as I said, whoever is involved in it, because I think China has the key. If China sincerely wants to influence Russia and would like them to come to the table and come to some kind of understanding, yes, it is possible. But then it's the question of the Western powers that not only have influence on the Ukraine, but also are very important in funding and arming this conflict. So the question will be whether they have the sincerity of purpose, whether they truly want to see peace, because it's a very, very volatile, very dangerous situation. And more than that, as far as the American administration is concerned and American public opinion is concerned, the amount of money that you are spending, the Americans are spending in the conflict in the Ukraine, as far as the public is concerned, they are very against this. because there's a lot more that can be done domestically in America than spend tens of billions of dollars in this conflict.
That is so true. And Ambassador Nasir, the fact is also that if you look at the latest information that we are reading on different platforms, is that the US is again going to provide billions of dollars to in arms to Israel. And the fact is, when you have conflicts on two fronts, Gaza and Lebanon, this increases the risk of an escalation that could escalate beyond control at one point if it is not handled properly. Do you feel that moods such as the United Nations General Assembly could be that arena where better sense could prevail?
Well, you see, the United Nations General Assembly gives you all an opportunity. 193 countries get together there. There are lots of bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the session. And at the same time, each and every one of these 193 countries over the course of the 6 or 7 days debate gets to present their point of view on international issues. So, there's always this question about how effective the United Nations is. But there, in that case, we always tend to look at it from the lens of conflict resolution and whether how successful the United Nations has been in preventing conflicts. But the United Nations is not only about that. The United Nations has tremendous programs of development assistance all over the world, of helping in cases of disasters. They are one of the first people there, of having a large peacekeeping force. So there's a lot of good work that they do. But when you get this opportunity to get together face to face in these bilateral meetings on the sidelines, you can in earnest put forward your point of view and listen to the other side's arguments and realize who is trying to ally with whom and how you can convince them to come towards your point of view. Because most people have a lot of reason, they have a lot of common sense, and most people do care about the interests of their own countries.
The fact is that, as you said, there are certain vested interests that go beyond the normal human interests that so many events during moods such as the United Nations General Assembly. Look at how our Prime Minister has talked to so many world leaders and has highlighted these two important issues that have been on the United Nations agenda since decades, whether it be the Palestine issue or the Kashmir issue. These are two issues that have yet to be resolved. These are two issues that are quite similar in several aspects, and these are two issues that the way things are going don't seem to find a solution therein. In this perspective, what needs to be done by the powers that be and by the countries at large that form this United Nations General Assembly? It's just not about the United Nations Security Council. It should be also about all the other 100 plus members, 150 plus members that form the rest of the United Nations.
So you see, when the United Nations was formed, the first meeting was held on January 10th, 1946 in London. Primarily the people who got the power of veto were those powers, barring China, were those powers who dominated after the Second World War. So this, what I call aberration, exists to this day, which is rather unfair, because as far as security situation in the world is concerned, if you really want to make a difference, then having a veto from one of the P5 countries is not a very practical thing. You have seen this in the case of Israel's conduct over the decades. There are resolutions against them, and there may be one hand that comes up and puts forward a veto. So nowadays there are two regional. Earlier on there were two kind of regions, the Soviet bloc and the Western bloc. After the Cold War ended, now it's more or less the North, the
global North versus the global South.
Global South. And the other issue that has come up now, because of the strength and the rise of China, is that now the United States wants to prevent China's influence in the Pacific.
All right. On that note, I'd like to ask General Raza Khan, who's also waiting patiently for us. General Saab, the 21-day peace proposal that has been put forward by many important members of the United Nations Security Council as well as General Assembly, is this going to pass through? In the beginning, we heard that Israel's office and Netanyahu's office had completely denied that they're going to move forward with that. Now we hear that there are some kind of negotiations going on between both the sides. What are you looking in? I mean, if you look into it, what are your inferences that you take out?
Okay, I will try to draw a parallel between what is happening in the Middle East and Ukraine and what happened in Afghanistan. Eventually, when the United States spent over $1 trillion in Afghanistan, I think they realized that the cost of war there for the 21 years is unaffordable, and therefore they decided to quit, amongst other reasons. Here again, I think this spending on a war on two fronts by the United States and its allies, I think sooner than later it is going to become unsustainable. And I have some figures which say that, the United States has so far provided $175 billion to Ukraine. Most of it is loan. I don't know how they're going to repay it. And Israel's yearly budget used to be about $30 billion on defense. And I think it has so far spent twice than that. So its defense spending has doubled. And I think it is now in the range of $70 billion. So I don't know whether it is sustainable for the Israeli economy or not. In addition to that, I think there is public pressure building up within Israel as well as in the United States, in UK, from the people of these countries. And I think that will have effects, on their government. And I think as it happened, if you recall, it started from such kinds of pressures.
Raza Khan Sahab, I'd like to interrupt you here because I really have a huge question mark on whether that public pressure is going to have any impact whatsoever on the way the Israeli government or the US government want to move ahead. I really feel maybe the US to some extent, but at the end of the day, maybe some vested interests of the US vis-a-vis Israel supersede the interests of the US public. What's your take on that?
Okay, so I was just about to say that what happened, when the war in Vietnam was stopped by the United States. This was against, because of the public pressure there, which is actually very significant, and I hope it cannot sustain that. And remember, the demonstrations in favor of peace in the universities of the United States, we're top universities over there. Okay, in addition to that, look, the cost of war for Israel itself, I think is going to be unsustainable because there is severe migration of capital from Israel because of, insecurity. There is a huge brain drain going out again because of insecurity. Okay. I think a very important, significant portion of foreign diaspora, which used to support Israel, are leaving the country again because of the fear of war and insecurity. Israel is now almost fighting a forefront war in Gaza, in West Bank, in Lebanon, and also partially, in the Golan Heights. So I think for any military to do that, it will eventually get fatigued, and it will also, be overstretched. And military history tells us that in such conditions, I think victory becomes, very far-fetched goals. So the better the Israeli political leadership realizes this, the better it would be for Israel and the world. And I think the Israeli military leadership, they need to actually now stand up boldly to the Israeli political leadership and tell them what is possible and what is not possible.
Well, there's, I don't know, there are such a lot of complexities and points of views as far as that is concerned, because I really don't understand why things are happening the way they are happening and why this war is extending beyond means, just like the Russia-Ukraine war. Coming to Dr. Mahmood Khalid, who is a leading economist who has also joined us and who is listening to this debate very enthusiastically, I hope. There are different aspects, to world conflicts, and one of the basic things that gets hit when there are issues, when there are conflicts, is the economy, whether it be the global economy, whether it be climate finance, whether it be sustainability of different countries, especially the developing countries. That really is at stake when it comes to conflicts such as these. How can the United Nations General Assembly and all of its members work together to not only highlight this, as a lot of people have done during the course of these different speeches that have happened in these 3 days, but also to work toward a consensus so as to stabilize the developing countries vis-a-vis the developed countries. This has also been highlighted by our Prime Minister, in fact, when he talked about the debt traps. What's your take on that?
Well, thank you, Omar, first of all, for having me here. Now, as it has been discussed here as well, that the UN has got a very large mandate, which runs not just in terms of the regional global affairs, but also to protect or safeguard the vulnerable populations across the globe, in which one of the aspects is about the developing countries, and especially those which are affected by the activities around the globe. As we have seen that last time the inflation spike, which came especially affecting the developing countries like Pakistan, came from the Ukraine-Russia war. And now the uncertainty in terms of Israel invading Lebanon is also creating panics across the globe, because it halts the economic activity because of the fear in terms of how the world is going to engage in terms of settling down things. Now, UN does it not just from the perspective of creating a kind of a consensus on these issues, because at the back of it there is an underlying assumption that if there is more peace, harmony, then the economic activity globally is going to increase. But it does not have the mandate directly in terms of the economic provisions. But it does provide the negotiating tables, that kind of a platform in which these negotiations actually happen, whether it is related to the trade affairs under the UNCTAD or the climate change, where the UN also General Assembly plays a very active role in terms of trying to build the consensus that we need the mitigations activities to carry on. The global north has to actually work in terms of reducing those emissions because it is affecting the global south. But at the same time, they also try to exert pressure in terms of the countries, in terms of providing the necessary relief to the damaged countries as well, in terms of the climate financing. And this is what the different forums under the COP had already agreed upon as well. But since the UN does not provide the bindings in terms of how and when the economic relief should be provided, as compared to the Security Council setups in which they can enforce something by the consensus of the Security Council members, the platforms which are provided for the global leaders to come across and deliberate on the issues is more or less is kind of a generating the necessary kind of consensus or making the informed decisions which are for the globe. Whether you look at from the SDGs perspective, whether you look at from the UN's health charter in terms of providing the necessary relief. But the idea is only to build informed and a kind of a more consensus-based growth for across the people in the globe.
All right, before I move to my other guests, now that I have you on board, our Prime Minister has met many important leaders in the business world, whether it be Pakistani American bankers on the sidelines of this meeting, whether it be, with the other world leaders in which economy was discussed as part of other issues as well, whether it be with the IMF chief or the World Bank chief, or Pakistan, US-Pakistan delegation as well that met him. Economy was on the agenda of all of that, and there were a lot of reassurances that were given by all of those leaders and all of those communities during these meetings with our Prime Minister. What how should we now move forward after these meetings? How can we, monitor all these meetings after the UNGA session and move in such a manner that these meetings become even more constructive as far as the implementations are concerned?
These meetings had been very constructive because they were done with all the active donors which are right now engaged with Pakistan as well, starting off with the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and also during the same period, Pakistan also got the IMF 25th Extended Fund Facility Program. So the Prime Minister also had an opportunity to meet them. And along as you have also mentioned that on the sidelines, they have met with the different heads of the states as well. So what the benefit of these meetings are that it by and large creates a kind of a consensus in terms of how Pakistan is trying to recover from the fallout of higher inflation and the possible chances of the kind of non-payments on the external front which Pakistan was threatened off with. So we are on the right track. This is the positive message which the Prime Minister was able to convey to the rest of the world. And we are expecting that because of these sideline meetings, a better perspective into the future of Pakistan has been delivered by our Prime Minister along with his team. And now what needs to be done is the critical follow-up with these global leaders on various aspects which Pakistan has actually agreed upon. For example, the Prime Minister has met with the World Bank head, and they have agreed upon in terms of developing a 10-year economic plan, which the government of Pakistan is going to finalize with the help of the World Bank. Similarly, the Asian Development Bank is also leading a number of initiatives here related to the digitalization and the energy sector. So if the leaders' jobs is basically to create the necessary linkages or networkings, now it is going to be the responsibility of the line ministries to follow up on all those commitments, discussions which had taken place. And fortunately, since the finance ministry was at the top of these discussions, the minister himself is very clear about them. And since we have also agreed upon certain structural reforms under the IMF program, so what we are expecting from the outside is that if only and only if Pakistan wants to come out of these perpetual deficits and fallouts towards the IMF, then we have to strictly follow what we are determined for. And that needs political consensus, that needs efforts all across the governments. You must have read it in the newspaper that there were concerns about the provincial governments as well. So it's not just going to be the federal government this time which needs to actually start reforming critically and seriously. It is going to be the provincial governments as well. So it has to be a kind of a whole effort on the part of the government. Having said that, the private sector to date is also willing to contribute on various forums whenever there was interactions. So hopefully this is going to be different from the earlier IMF programs. And as the Prime Minister has rightly mentioned, that this is the last time we are going to engage with them, and after the third year of the program, we would be able to sustain it for future as well.
All right. My last question is to the both of you, Nasir Ali Khan Sahab as well as Raza Khan Sahab, and that concerns, I'd like your point of view, a short one because we're a bit short of time, and that concerns consensus. That is something that Mahmood, Khalid brought up as well, where how can we move forward under an arena of consensus to apply pressure on Israel despite the fact that it has backing of important world powers, so that conflicts could be resolved? Or are you pessimistic about it? What's your take on that? I'll begin with you, Nasir Ali Khan Sahab.
No, I'm not pessimistic about it. Again, if there is political will and there is unity amongst those countries that find it very outrageous and are dismayed by the genocide that's taking place, it's not just sanctions or embargoes which they may not be able to put together, but they could have a campaign to boycott products that would hit Israel economically. And they could also put pressure on others who are helping Israel, often being hypocritical in the sense, on the one hand they would send assistance and on the other hand they would continue to supply arms to Israel. So when the rest of the world that is against this conflict manages to unite, of course, there will be a stronger opposition and they will be heard better.
All right. Raza Khan Sahab, your take, but a short answer, please.
First of all, I think it is important to say that countering Islamophobia is again, I think, very important for Pakistan, and the Prime Minister is going to talk about that. The arm race, particularly in the world and in the subcontinent, because of the US policies there, wherein it is actually supporting India and Pakistan and other countries like China are compelled, to catch up with India. So that probably should also be or will also be part of the talks. Misuse of artificial intelligence, again, the Prime Minister made a mention of that. I think they're in the Leadership for Peace conference. And now, particularly to come to the answer, I think we need to understand that the reason for the United States and UK to provide unconditional support to Israel is based on their religious beliefs. It is an article of faith for them, for the Christian and the English Zionist, as it relates to the end of time, prophecies in the Bible. And although, the Israeli religious leaders, they do not agree with that, but that is the kind of reason for that. And I think that also has to be countered with it.
All right. A lot has to be spoken about, a lot has to be implemented, and I hope that the United Nations General Assembly session will be exactly the forum to do that. Thank you very much to my three eminent guests, Nasir Ali Khan Saab, former Ambassador at Large, Lieutenant General Raza Khan Saab, Defence Analyst, and Dr. Mahmood Khalid, leading economist, who have joined us, who have talked to us as a precursor of this address of our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to the United Nations General Assembly session that is going to happen in a few moments' time. We'll be back after this break to discuss more on that, and we'll be also discussing our Premier's address to the United Nations General Assembly session. Stay tuned for more right here on PTV World. For the moment, it's goodbye from myself, Omar Khalid.